I know, saying Voldemort is an allegory for fascism, that isn't really a spicy take these days. Harry Potter is an entire story about unjust prejudices. The Muggleborn versus pureblood conflict is a stand-in for any oppressor and oppressed conflict you want it to represent. Voldemort is your general, Hitlery fascist who hates Muggleborns for unjustified and provably false reasons. There's no real ambiguity there. Voldemort is just a big smelly racist who is bad. And that could be a good thing. It's an entry-level foot-in-the-door take on how racism is bad for kids. But there is a big problem I have. A thing that leaves a sour taste in my mouth about the entire series. You see, Muggleborns aren't the only oppressed people in the Harry Potter series. They aren't the only people facing these unjust prejudices against them. Let's start with the obvious. House elves are slaves. Again, that's not a spicy take. House elves are a class of people who are owned by other people and forced to work for them without pay. Throughout the series, characters that are seen as trustworthy, even big softies like Hagrid, tell us again and again that the house elves just like it this way. It'd be doing them an unkindness, Hermione. It's in their nature to look after humans. It's what they like, you see. You'd be making them unhappy to take away their work, and insulting them if you tried to pay them. Even Dobby, the figurehead of elvish freedom, doesn't seem to have much of an issue. Dobby's issues always seem to be not with slavery as a practice, but rather with his own individual treatment by the Malfoys in particular. Dobby gives us the idea that he'd be okay with being a slave if the people who owned him were just nicer. And that's not nice. Now, I don't want to sound like I'm blaming Dobby for his own treatment. In fact, the feelings of these house elves could be a very powerful example of false consciousness. False consciousness is the concept that an oppressed class could be fooled into working against their own interest by the oppressors. The house elves truly believe that the place they're in is where they deserve to be. Despite being offered reasonable working terms by Dumbledore, they still choose to be oppressed because that's what they think is right, due to generations of mistreatment and internalized beliefs about their own inferiority. This could be a very powerful message, except the story doesn't really go anywhere with it. Hermione tries to set up her advocacy group, but this is played off as almost a joke. They give it a silly name, and Harry and Ron go along with it more to humour her than out of actual support. Hagrid tells them that they just don't understand the world, and we're left with this uncomfortable message that maybe the grown-ups are right. Maybe the house elves are just biologically inferior. This isn't just seen with the house elves either. This concept is echoed a lot throughout the series. The giants are depicted as mindless savages who just want to fight and violence. When the story breaks that Hagrid is half-giant and the parents are very unhappy, Harry and company aren't happy with this. But it's framed in a way that Hagrid is good despite being half-giant. The characters never address the root prejudices that led people to believe this, never address the racist beliefs that the magical society as a whole has. They just say that Hagrid isn't like other giants. Grawp is kind of nice, but again, that's because he's short and isn't like the other giants. Grawp doesn't show us that giants aren't all mindless beasts, but rather, Grawp is a failed giant. Looking at goblins gives us a very apt example, yikes, imagery aside. The goblins are a group of people who have actively fought for equality. There are many mentions throughout the novels about goblin revolutions, and it's clear that goblins are still seen as below wizards. Goblins aren't allowed to carry wands, despite Griphook saying this is something that they very much wanted. Goblins are treated in the same way as convicted felons in that regard. The goblins are oppressed and actively seek better conditions, but are denied them. The goblins are shown to have a very different culture than wizards, with different concepts of ownership and money, and this justification is used by the books to say that they're correct to be oppressed. Even dreamy, handsome, Domhnall Gleeson-y-looking Bill Weasley said, "I know goblins. I've worked for Gringotts ever since I left Hogwarts. As far as there can be friendship between wizards and goblins, I have goblin friends. Or at least, goblins I know well and like. If you've struck any kind of bargain with Griphook, and most particularly if that bargain involves treasure, you must be exceptionally careful. Goblin notions of ownership, payment, and repayment are not the same as human ones. We are talking about a different breed of being." Now, Bill Weasley in the novels is always portrayed as cool, collected, hot, and on top of things. And he tells Harry on no uncertain terms that goblins are just too different to be friends with. If a cool and hot character like Bill is saying it, then that gives us the idea that maybe Wizarding Society is right to treat them differently. Maybe they're just too different to be treated the same. Maybe they should be denied certain rights. Maybe integration is never possible. And in the real world, people with a different culture, a different concept of ownership and more advanced weaponry has never oppressed others. Right? And then we come to the real problem I have. None of these ideas are ever challenged. In fact, the only thing ever really challenged is the belief that Muggleborns are inferior. From the start through Hermione, we're shown that this inferiority is completely made up, as Hermione is just as good as any other witch or wizard. When Ron finally comes to support the House Elves in the final book, it's not because his beliefs are challenged, but rather due to his love for Hermione. When Harry comes to treat Kreacher well, it's not due to his understanding that slavery is bad, but due to him needing something that Kreacher had. House Elves are always subservient. When giants aren't violent, they're shown to be the exceptions to the rule. Goblins are always tricksy and they can never be trusted. And in a vacuum, in a fantasy world, all of this could be okay. If in this fake world House Elves are just genetically subservient, then sure, okay. But Harry Potter doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists to tell us a very obvious and important story about prejudice and xenophobia and oppression. It has these strong themes to try and teach a moral to kids. The idea that there are these people in the world that do exist, that do deserve these treatment, and that do meet all the stereotypes against them, it does undermine the entire concept, because in the real world, there is no such thing as a group of people predisposed for servitude or violence or honesty or any of those things. These ideas have led to a lot of real-world violence and can be extremely harmful. It leaves us with this idea that racism is bad when Voldemort's doing it, because it's quantifiably true that Muggleborns are just the same as wizards and witches, but there's also some people it's okay to oppress because they are inferior. This is the same concept that's led fascists down the road of race science, and this is the concept that real-life fascists have used to justify slavery, apartheid, the Holocaust, and a lot of really horrible real-world things. This is the complete thematic opposite of what the series is meant to be about, and that's the dissonance I have an issue with. You can't say that prejudices are bad, and then have exceptions to when they are bad. You can't oppose fascism while supporting fascist beliefs. Now, I'm certain this isn't what JK intended, and the real problem is that it was never addressed in the series. At the end of the day, I love Harry Potter, and it feels like these were very interesting ideas to lay down, but without ever actually picking them up again, it's left these concepts in an uncomfortable limbo where we just have these stereotypes thrown out that are never actually opposed or addressed. And yeah, I'm sure people are going to inform me that these points were addressed in Pottermore or in Extended Universe material, but I'm not reading The Cursed Child again. Hey y'all, thanks for watching this video. If you liked this video, then that's pretty cool. It means that my life isn't a waste. If you liked it that much, then you could always press that subscribe button. That would make me feel good. Also, I have a Patreon where you can give me money. I like money. That's me. All I want is money. But you don't have to. It's just a thing that I have, because I like making videos, really. And that money, I'm joking. I just want to make videos, and money is necessary, so I can not starve. That went on too long. Just... bye.